Welcome to the Wellbeing Podcast, where every episode is a step towards a healthier.
Happier you.
Let's grow, thrive, and shine together.
Absolutely.
Today,
We're
diving deep into the world of self-motivation. We've got a stack of books and articles here ready to uncover those hidden gems of wisdom that can help us become the most energized, driven versions of ourselves, ready to unlock your inner motivator. Let's dive in.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that really struck me going through these sources is we think of motivation as this thing, you either have it or you don't, it's sort of a personality trait.
Right.
And all of these sources were really framing it more as a skill, something that you can develop and strengthen over time.
Okay, so it's not about waiting for that lightning bolt of inspiration to strike. It's about getting to know the nuts and bolts of motivation and putting in the work to build those habits.
Totally. And, one of the things that comes up again and again is visualization. And I know that can sound kind of, but it's actually, there's real science behind it.
I've heard about this.
Yeah.
Isn't there a story about Arnold Schwarzenegger using visualization to become a Hollywood star?
Yes.
Okay.
And I love this story.
Tell me.
He had this crazy goal to become the #1 box office star in Hollywood.
Okay.
And you can imagine, this bodybuilder with this thick Austrian accent.
Right.
What are the right.
Yeah.
But he really used this technique of almost living into the picture. So he would create these very vivid images of himself as the successful actor and basically act as if it were already true.
So he wasn't just daydreaming.
Yeah.
He was actively embodying that vision.
Exactly. And it worked. He became the biggest box office draw in the world.
Crazy.
And so this is a great example of how our minds can actually shape our reality.
Wow.
And that by consistently visualizing ourselves, achieving our goals, we're actually priming our brains to act in ways that make those goals more likely to happen.
So you're telling me if I can see it and believe it, I can achieve it?
Yeah. I mean, and speaking rewiring our thinking, one of the sources talked about this interesting technique called the true lies technique. Have you ever heard of this?
True lies. That sounds very intriguing.
Yeah. So it involves writing what they call lie poems about yourself.
Okay.
And basically, you exaggerate how amazing you are, even if it feels totally untrue at first. And it's this playful way to start envisioning your highest self and start breaking free from these limiting beliefs that we all have,
So it's like tricking your mind into believing in your potential.
Kind of, yeah. And then another really important aspect of motivation that came up again and again was focus. And one of the sources used this brilliant analogy about walking across a 2x4.
Okay, a 2x4, I'm with you, but I'm not sure where this is going.
So imagine if that 2x4 was just lying flat on the ground, you wouldn't even hesitate to walk across it, right?
No.
Super easy. But what if that same 2x4 was suspended high in the air between two buildings?
Oh, it's completely different.
Right, suddenly...
My heart's racing. My palms are sweating.
Yeah, you're terrified of falling.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what happens with our goals when we lose focus. When doubts and negative thoughts creep in, it's like that 2x4 suddenly being suspended in midair.
Right.
We become paralyzed by fear and uncertainty.
Okay, so the key takeaway here is to keep our eyes on the prize.
Right.
Maintain that laser focus on our goals and not let those what-ifs distract us from taking action.
Exactly.
Love it.
And sometimes what we need to do is actually embrace the challenges, even seek them out. And one of the sources talks about sweating in peace.
Sweating in peace. Now that sounds like my kind of workout. What does that even mean?
Well, it means pushing yourself during those calmer times, building up your resilience so that when those bigger obstacles inevitably arise, you're ready to tackle them head on.
It's like training for a marathon.
Exactly.
Wouldn't just show up on race day without any preparation.
Right? By consistently pushing ourselves, even in small ways, we develop that mental and emotional stamina to overcome challenges.
Okay, I'm getting pumped up just thinking about it.
But
But let's be realistic. Life can get pretty chaotic.
yeah.
How do we even find the time and energy to focus on our goals amidst all the noise?
That's where simplifying our lives comes in. Several sources emphasize the importance of decluttering both physically and mentally
Yeah.
to free up mental space and boost our overall
Oh,
well-being.
decluttering is my jam.
Nice.
A clean space equals a clear mind.
Love it.
But what are some practical tips for streamlining our daily activities?
I'm all ears.
One of the sources recommended combining tasks whenever possible.
Okay.
So, for example, if you need to run errands and want to catch up with a friend, why not do both at the same time?
Right.
Kill two birds with one stone.
I love that. It's like multitasking, but in a mindful and productive way. What else?
Another tip is to handle everything immediately.
So address tasks as soon as they pop up, rather than letting them pile up and create overwhelm.
Okay, that sounds like a good way to avoid procrastination.
It is.
But let's be honest, sometimes it's easier said than done. Any tips for overcoming that initial resistance?
Start small.
Okay.
It may sound counterintuitive, but even just easing into a task for a few minutes can break that inertia and make it much more likely that you'll complete it.
It's like tricking your brain into thinking, hey, this isn't so bad after all.
Yeah.
And once you've started, it's much easier to keep going. I like it.
And as you start tackling those tasks and achieving those goals, you start building this track record of success. And this is so important for shifting our belief systems and developing a more empowered mindset.
It's like that fake it till you make it idea, but with concrete actions and accomplishments to back it up.
Exactly.
Love it.
And the more we achieve, the more we believe in ourselves and the more motivated we become to set even bigger goals. It creates this upward spiral of growth and accomplishment.
That's what I'm talking about. But let's not forget to have some fun along the way, right?
Absolutely. One of the sources talked about the power of fun and how incorporating activities we genuinely enjoy into our daily lives can actually unlock our natural energy and drive.
Okay.
It's about tapping into those feel-good brain chemicals that boost our mood and motivation.
So it's not just about being productive. It's about creating a life that feels vibrant and joyful.
Exactly. And that joy fuels our motivation,
Right.
creating this amazing positive feedback loop.
I'm all about those positive feedback loops. So it's not about forcing ourselves to do things we hate. It's about finding ways to make even those less enjoyable tasks more engaging.
Yeah,
I love that.
you got it. And remember, fun doesn't have to be this big, elaborate production. It could be as simple as listening to your favorite music while you work or finding ways to inject a little playfulness into your daily routine.
I think that's a great reminder for all of us to find those little sparks of joy throughout the day. It's those moments that make life feel worth living.
Now, let's dive into something a little more technical. The right side of the brain.
Okay, I'm ready for a brain boost. What's so special about the right side?
Well, it's not about favoring one side over the other. It's about activating both sides of our brain to unlock our full potential.
Okay.
Think of it like this. The left brain is the logical planner, while the right brain is the creative visionary. We need both to thrive.
So the left brain is all about logic and reasoning,
Yeah.
while the right brain is where our creativity and intuition hang out.
Exactly. It's like having a powerful engine but no steering wheel, or having a beautiful map but no compass. We need both to navigate effectively.
I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Good.
So how do we activate both sides and get them working together in harmony?
Well, remember those visualization techniques we talked about earlier?
Right.
Those are great for activating the right brain. Other activities like painting, writing, listening to music can also help to spark that creative energy.
So it's about finding that balance between logic and intuition, planning and spontaneity.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the power of small goals. It's easy to get overwhelmed when we only focus on those big, long-term objectives.
Oh, tell me about it. Sometimes those big goals feel so far off that it's hard to even know where to begin.
Right. Well, one of the sources talked about setting what they call process goals.
Process goals.
Okay.
Break that down for me. What are those exactly?
So instead of fixating on that big end goal, you break it down into smaller, more achievable goals.
Okay.
It's like creating a roadmap for success.
It's like that saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Exactly.
By focusing on those smaller steps, we create a sense of progress and avoid feeling overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the bigger goal.
And each small win, each process goal achieved, builds our confidence and motivates us to keep moving forward.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. It's not just about setting goals. It's about having the right mindset and the right strategies to actually achieve them.
Now, speaking of mindset, let's talk about optimism.
Optimism, huh? I like to think I'm a pretty optimistic person. But life definitely throws those curveballs sometimes.
Yeah.
How do we stay positive when things get tough?
Well, one source recommended actively challenging those negative thoughts. It's about becoming aware of those pessimistic thought patterns and consciously choosing to reframe them.
So instead of dwelling on what could go wrong, we focus on what could go right. It's like finding the silver lining even in the midst of a storm cloud.
Exactly. And there are some really practical techniques for doing this. One suggestion is to treat those pessimistic thoughts as if they're being presented in a courtroom.
Yeah.
You become the defense attorney,
Yeah.
and you argue for the optimistic side.
I love that analogy.
Yeah,
So instead of just accepting those negative thoughts as truth,
right.
we cross-examine them, we challenge their validity, and we present a more positive, empowering perspective. It's like taking back control of our thought process.
You got it. It's not about denying the challenges. It's about approaching them with a more hopeful and solution-oriented mindset. And that brings us to another interesting point, turning weaknesses into strengths.
Now, this is a concept I'm really interested in. We all have those areas where we feel less than confident,
Yeah.
those things that we perceive as holding us back.
Mm.
But how do we flip the script and actually leverage those weaknesses to our advantage?
Well, one source used the example of Richard Burton, the legendary actor known for his incredibly powerful voice.
Right.
He wasn't born with that voice, you know? He developed it through years of dedicated practice, even singing opera in the shower.
Seriously, opera in the shower.
Yeah.
That's dedication.
Right.
So even something as seemingly innate as our voice can be transformed through conscious effort and practice.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing our potential, not just our limitations. And another source mentioned how public speaking, something that many people dread, can actually become a strength if we approach it with the right mindset.
It's about reframing our fears and seeing those weaknesses as opportunities for growth. It's about pushing ourselves beyond our comfort zones and discovering those hidden strengths we never knew we had.
And speaking of pushing ourselves, let's talk about thinking big.
Yes.
You know, these sources really emphasize the power of setting ambitious goals to spark creative thinking and unlock new possibilities.
I'm all about dreaming big.
Good.
But sometimes those big goals can feel so daunting that it's hard to even know where to begin.
Yeah.
How do we translate those big dreams into concrete actions?
Well, one technique is called inflating your goal.
Inflating your goal.
Yeah, and it sounds counterintuitive, but if your initial goal feels intimidating, you actually make it even bigger.
Wait, make it bigger.
Ah.
How does that help?
It forces you to think outside the box, to consider possibilities you might have never imagined before. It's about breaking free from those self-imposed limitations and expanding your horizons.
It's like giving yourself permission to dream bigger and bolder.
Exactly. And once you've explored those more audacious options, it becomes much easier to break down that bigger goal into smaller, more achievable steps. It's a great way to unleash your creativity and get those innovative juices flowing.
Wow, this is eye-opening. It's like we're rewiring our brains for success.
Good.
But we've covered a lot of ground already,
We have.
and there's even more to come.
Yeah.
We'll be back in part 2 of this deep dive to explore even more strategies for unleashing your inner motivator. Don't forget to subscribe and like the Wellbeing Podcast.
And leave us a comment.
Share your thoughts and let us know in the comments what topics you'd love to hear about in future episodes. We'll be back soon with part 2, where we'll delve deeper into the world of mentorship, honesty, and the power of purpose.
See you then. Welcome back to our deep dive into self-motivation.
It's amazing how many different approaches there are to this topic.
I know, right? We've already talked about visualization focus, even turning weaknesses into strengths. It's like a whole toolbox of techniques just waiting to be used.
And the best part is you can pick and choose what works for you. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to motivation.
Right. But one thing that really struck me from the sources is this idea of visioneering. Have you heard of that term?
Visioneering. It sounds like something an architect would do.
Yeah.
How does that apply to self-motivation?
Well, it was coined by this motivational speaker, Dennis Deaton, and he describes it as actively engineering your dreams into reality. But not in a physical sense. It's about using the power of mental imagery to create a clear vision of what you want to achieve.
Okay.
And there's this great anecdote about Deaton's daughter, Margie,
Okay.
who was only 10 years old at the time, but she already had a grasp of this concept.
A 10-year-old motivation guru. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So she overheard her friend talking about being afraid to dive into the pool. And so little Margie, being the amazing friend, she's guided her friend through this visualization exercise.
Did it work?
It did. So she had her friend visualize standing on the diving board, feeling the cool water on her skin, actually taking that leap, and her friend was able to overcome her fear and dive in.
That's amazing. It shows how powerful our minds can be.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another surprisingly effective tool for overcoming fear.
Okay, what's that?
Laughter.
Laughter doesn't seem very serious.
I know, right? It's about not taking ourselves too seriously. You know what they say, laughter is the best medicine.
I do love a good laugh.
Yeah.
But how does that tie into self-motivation?
Well, the sources suggest that laughter can actually dissolve fear and open us up to new possibilities.
It's like if we can laugh at our fears, they lose their power over us.
Exactly. There's this great story about this comedian, Fred Knight, who uses humor to help people overcome their anxieties.
Okay.
And he once left a message for a friend who was going through a health scare, and he said, "Don't worry about the bleeding. It's normal for someone your age."
Okay, that's pretty funny. Dark humor.
Okay.
Get it. Sometimes we just need to lighten up and find the funny side of things.
Exactly. And, the sources suggest that this playful approach to problem solving can be incredibly liberating. It's about finding joy even in the midst of challenges and letting go of that need to be perfect.
I think that's a great reminder for all of us. We get so caught up in the seriousness of life that we forget to have fun. But speaking of staying organized, one of the sources talks about the importance of making lists.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a big list maker myself, so I'm curious to hear your take on this.
Yeah, lists are great for clarifying our goals and priorities, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I have lists for everything: groceries, errands, project ideas. It helps me stay focused.
Yeah, they provide a roadmap, a way to translate those vague aspirations into concrete steps.
Hmm.
And even something as simple as a grocery list can help us be more intentional and avoid those frustrating, oh, I forgot the milk moments.
Right?
It's like applying that same level of intentionality to our lives as a whole.
Yes, being mindful of our choices and aligning our actions with our goals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, another important aspect of staying motivated is surrounding ourselves with the right people.
Oh, the power of community. I
Yeah.
totally agree with that. We need those people who uplift and inspire us.
Yeah.
Those who challenge us to grow.
And just as importantly, we need to set boundaries with those who drain our energy and bring us down.
That's a good point.
It's about being mindful of who we allow into our inner circle and making sure that those relationships are truly serving our highest good.
It's like that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Right.
So we need to choose those 5 wisely.
Could have said it better myself. Now let's talk about action.
Okay.
We can have all the goals and dreams in the world, but without action, they'll just remain fantasies.
Action is where the magic happens.
Yeah.
It's what separates the dreamers from the doers.
And the sources emphasize the importance of taking consistent action, even if it's just small steps in the right direction.
Right. It's about building momentum, creating that positive feedback loop where each small win fuels our motivation to keep going.
Exactly. And there's this interesting analogy in one of the sources about a wrestler who was struggling to win matches.
Okay.
And his father, who happened to be a successful car salesman, advised him to develop a plan of attack, a series of moves that he would initiate rather than just reacting to his opponent.
Oh, I like that. So instead of just waiting for things to happen, we take charge and make things happen.
Exactly. It's a proactive approach, and it applies to all areas of life,
Hmm.
from our careers to our relationships to our personal growth.
So it's about setting those intentions, making those plans, and then taking consistent action to bring them to fruition. But what about when things don't go according to plan? What about negativity? I know we've been focusing on the positive,
Yeah.
but surely negativity has a role to play in all of this, right?
It does, but it's not about dwelling in negativity or letting it consume us.
Okay.
It's about using it as a catalyst for growth.
So we don't ignore the negative, we learn from it.
Exactly. There's this great quote from author Steve Hardison. He says, "When you ask for something in professional life and it is denied to you, imagine that the no you heard is really a question."
Okay.
Can't you be more creative than that? Oh, I love that.
So instead of seeing rejection as a failure, we see it as a challenge to innovate, to find a new and better solution. And that resilience, that ability to bounce back from setbacks, is essential for staying motivated on the long road to achieving our goals.
Okay, so we've talked about action and mindset and even negativity. But what about energy?
Oh, yeah.
Where does that fit in?
Energy management is crucial. It's about finding a sustainable pace,
Okay.
that sweet spot where we're fully engaged without burning ourselves out.
I'm definitely guilty of pushing myself too hard sometimes. Any tips for optimizing our energy levels?
Well, one source suggested being mindful of our media consumption. That constant influx of news and information can be incredibly draining.
Oh, I totally agree. It's like information overload. Sometimes I feel like I need to unplug from the world just to recharge.
That's exactly what one of the sources recommends: taking news fasts.
News fasts, I like that. Yeah, periods where you intentionally disconnect from the news cycle and reconnect with yourself. It's about creating space for creativity and inspiration to flow.
What else can we do to boost our energy?
Physical activity is another big one. We all know exercise is good for our bodies, but it's also incredibly beneficial for our mental and emotional well-being.
I know. I always feel so much better after a good workout.
And it doesn't have to be anything strenuous.
Mm.
Even a brisk walk, a yoga class, or a few minutes of stretching can make a world of difference.
It's about finding what feels good in our bodies and making it a regular part of our routine. And you know what else I find energizing? Connecting with my sense of purpose. That feeling of knowing why I'm here, what I'm passionate about, that gives me so much energy.
That's a powerful source of motivation, isn't it? Aligning our actions with our higher purpose.
Absolutely. It's like tapping into this wellspring of energy and inspiration.
One source talks about this mother who, in a moment of crisis, was able to lift a car to save her child. It's that surge of adrenaline, that superhuman strength that comes from tapping into a deep sense of purpose.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
It shows that we all have that potential within us,
we do.
that we're capable of incredible things when we connect with what truly matters to us. But, sometimes I think we get so focused on achieving our own goals that we forget about the importance of connecting with others.
That's a great point. And one of the sources highlights the importance of being a good listener.
Being a good listener.
Hmm.
I'd never really thought about that as being a key to self-motivation.
It's about creating space for connection and understanding.
Hmm.
When we truly listen to others, we build trust and rapport, which are essential for any successful relationship.
It's about being present, being attentive, and really hearing what the other person is saying.
And one source even suggests that we can use listening as a way to learn and grow.
Okay.
By paying attention to what others have to say, we gain new perspectives and insights that can help us to expand our own thinking.
So good listening skills can actually enhance our relationships and boost our motivation. Who knew?
Right. And don't forget about self-care. It's not selfish. It's essential.
Self-care is so important. I used to think it was all about bubble baths and spa days, but it's really about so much more than that.
It is. It's about prioritizing our own well-being, both physically and mentally.
Mm-hmm.
Recognizing that we can't pour from an empty cup.
So true. What are some of the self-care practices you find most beneficial?
Scheduling time for yourself is crucial. Treat it like any other important appointment.
Yes. Put it in the calendar and stick to it.
Setting boundaries is also essential, both with ourselves and with others.
Mhm.
It's about learning to say no to things that drain our energy and yes to things that nourish us.
Boundaries are all about protecting our time, energy, and emotional well-being.
Exactly. It's about creating a life that feels balanced and sustainable. A life that supports our growth and allows us to thrive.
Okay. I'm feeling inspired. But before we get too carried away, I'm curious to hear more about affirmations. You mentioned them earlier, and I know a lot of people swear by them.
Yeah.
But do they really work?
The sources definitely seem to think so. They suggest that affirmations can be incredibly effective for boosting our self-confidence and motivation.
It's all about those positive, empowering statements, right?
Yeah.
Repeating them over and over until they sink in.
Right. One source recommended writing them down and putting them in visible places.
Okay.
Like on
Yeah.
your bathroom mirror or your refrigerator, so you're constantly reminded of them.
I like that. It's like creating those visual cues to keep us focused on our goals and maintain that positive mindset.
And another source emphasized the importance of feeling the emotions associated with the affirmations. It's not just about repeating the words, it's about embodying the feeling of what it would be like to achieve your desired outcome.
So it's about creating that visceral experience, that sense of already having achieved your goal, so that your mind and body are aligned in that direction. I can see how that would be powerful.
Yeah.
But what about when we need a little extra support? Is there anything in the sources about finding a mentor?
Yeah, actually, mentorship is highlighted as a valuable tool for staying motivated and achieving our goals.
It's like having someone who's been there, done that to guide you and cheer you on.
Exactly. One source recommended looking for a mentor who is a good listener, supportive, and willing to challenge you to grow.
It's about finding someone who believes in you, who sees your potential, and who helps you to become the best version of yourself.
And remember, it's a two-way street.
Right.
Being a good mentee is just as important. Be open to feedback, be willing to learn, and be proactive in seeking out guidance.
Okay, so we've got our goals, our mindset, our support system now. What about creating a space that actually supports our self-motivation?
That's a great point. One of the sources talked about the importance of creating a supportive environment, both physically and emotionally.
So it's not just about what's going on inside our heads.
Yeah.
It's also about our surroundings.
Exactly. Declutter your physical space. Create a sanctuary where you feel comfortable and at ease.
Mm,
Surround yourself with positive and supportive people. Fill your life with things that bring you joy.
right.
Music, books, nature.
It's like creating a fertile ground for our motivation to grow and flourish.
And don't forget about taking care of your mental health. It's just as important as physical health.
Absolutely. Mental health is the foundation of everything.
Yeah, practices like mindfulness, getting enough sleep, connecting with loved ones can make a world of difference.
Mm.
Make time for activities that bring you joy, hobbies, creative pursuits, anything that nourishes your soul.
And it's okay to ask for help if you're struggling. There are resources available to support you.
Absolutely. It's a sign of strength to reach out for support when you need it. Now let's revisit the concept of boundaries. They're so crucial for protecting our time, energy, and emotional well-being.
Boundaries are like our personal force field. They keep the negative stuff out and allow the positive stuff in.
One source compared boundaries to a fence, just as a fence protects your property. Boundaries protect your personal space and prevent others from encroaching on your time and energy.
I love that analogy. It's
Yeah.
about creating those clear limits that help us to stay focused on our priorities.
And remember to communicate your boundaries clearly and assertively.
Right.
Let others know what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not.
It's about creating healthy and respectful relationships where everyone's needs are met.
Now let's circle back to affirmations. We touched on them earlier, but they're worth diving into a bit deeper.
I'm all for exploring any tool that can help boost our self-confidence and motivation. So remind me again, what are the key elements of using affirmations effectively?
It's about choosing positive and empowering statements that truly resonate with you. Write them down. Put them where you'll see them and repeat them regularly, either out loud or silently to yourself.
It's like creating a soundtrack for success.
And don't forget to feel the emotions associated with the affirmations.
Right?
Imagine what it would be like to already have achieved your goal.
Embodying the feeling.
Got it. Let that feeling wash over you. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I have one more question for you.
Okay, sure.
What about those times when we feel stuck, when we just can't seem to find that spark of motivation?
That's a great question. And you know what? I think sometimes we just need a break.
That's exactly what one of the sources suggests.
Really?
Taking a break can actually be incredibly beneficial.
A break? You mean like a vacation?
Not necessarily. It could be something as simple as stepping away from your work for a few minutes, taking a walk outside, listening to some music.
It's about giving our minds a chance to rest and recharge.
Exactly. And sometimes a change of scenery can do wonders.
I'm starting to think that self-motivation is more about finding what works for you than following any rigid set of rules.
That's the beauty of it. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. It's about experimenting, finding what resonates with you, and creating a self-motivation toolkit that supports your unique journey.
This has been so insightful. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on self-motivation.
And there's still more to come. We'll be back in part 3 to explore some final tips and insights to help you unlock your full potential and create a life filled with purpose and passion.
I can't wait. This is getting better and better. Don't forget to subscribe and like the Wellbeing Podcast. Share your thoughts and let us know in the comments what topics you'd love to hear about in future episodes.
See you soon for part 3.
Welcome back to the Wellbeing Podcast for the final part of our deep dive into self-motivation.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
I know, right? From visualization and goal setting to the power of laughter and even the importance of listening, it feels like we've uncovered a whole treasure trove of self-motivation secrets.
And the best part is there's always more to discover. But before we wrap up, there are a few more gems of wisdom from the sources that I think are worth sharing.
Okay. I'm all ears. Lay it on me.
One concept that really resonated with me is this idea of replacing worry with action.
Okay.
We all know that feeling of getting stuck in a worry spiral, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like my brain is a broken record playing the same negative track on repeat.
Going over and over those same anxious thoughts without actually making any progress.
Right. How do we break free from that cycle?
Well, the sources suggest that the antidote to worry isn't just positive thinking, it's taking action.
So instead of dwelling on what could go wrong, we shift our focus to what we can do to improve the situation.
Exactly. One source recommends asking yourself this simple question: what can I do about this right now? It's about moving from a passive state of worry to an active state of problem solving.
Right.
And even if you can only take a small step, even if it's just 5 minutes of focused effort, that action can create a sense of momentum and help to alleviate those anxious feelings.
It's like taking back control, right? Instead of letting worry control us, we take control of the situation.
And speaking of taking control, One of the sources drew this interesting distinction between what they called the whiners and the thinkers in any
Oh,
organization.
I know those types.
Yeah.
The whiners are always complaining about problems, but never offering solutions.
Right.
While the thinkers, well, they think, but
Exactly.
they come to the table with ideas and a can-do attitude.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that both types might be equally intelligent and dedicated, but it's their mindset that makes all the difference.
It's about choosing to be a problem solver rather than a problem dweller.
Now, on the topic of mindset, another source highlights the importance of understanding the difference between pleasure and enjoyment.
Okay.
It's a subtle distinction, but a crucial one.
I'm curious, what's the difference? They both sound pretty good to me.
Well, think about it this way. Pleasure is often fleeting and superficial. It's that instant gratification, like indulging in a sugary treat or binge watching your favorite show. It feels good in the moment, but it doesn't usually leave a lasting sense of satisfaction,
Right.
whereas enjoyment is more about fulfillment.
Right.
It's that feeling of accomplishment, of having used your skills and talents to create something meaningful.
So engaging in activities that challenge us and utilize our strengths,
Exactly.
like learning a new language, writing a song, or building something with our own hands,
Yeah.
those pursuits bring a deeper sense of enjoyment.
And that brings us back to the power of small goals.
Right.
It's a concept we've touched on before, but it's worth emphasizing again.
I'm all about breaking those big, hairy goals into smaller, more manageable steps. It's so much less intimidating that way.
Right. And one source recommended using a technique called process goals to do just that. So instead of focusing solely on the end result, we set goals for the actions we need to take to get there.
Okay.
It's about shifting our focus from the outcome to the process, from the destination to the journey.
Right. And as we achieve those smaller goals, we build our confidence and create a sense of momentum that keeps us moving forward. It's like that old saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. But in this case, it's a series of small steps that lead to that big, audacious goal.
Now let's talk about the power of imagination.
Yeah.
It's a tool we often underestimate, but it can be incredibly powerful for fueling our self-motivation.
Oh, I love using my imagination.
Yeah.
It's like having my own personal movie theater inside my head.
One source suggested using our imagination to advertise to ourselves.
All right.
So we create mental images of what we want to achieve and how we want to feel, just like those compelling commercials that get stuck in our heads.
It's about creating those internal motivators that remind us of our goals and inspire us to take action.
And another source recommended using our imagination to turn weaknesses into strengths.
Ooh, that's a good one. So instead of dwelling on our shortcomings, we use our imagination to reframe those perceived weaknesses as potential assets.
Exactly. It's about shifting our perspective and seeing those challenges as opportunities for growth and innovation.
It's like turning lemons into lemonade, or maybe even a gourmet lemon tart.
Exactly. And speaking of positive thinking, one of the sources emphasized the importance of optimism.
Optimism. It's like having a built-in cheerleader, always rooting for us, even when things get tough.
One source recommended treating those pesky, pessimistic thoughts as if they're on trial.
Okay.
So you present evidence for the optimistic side of the argument, challenging those negative beliefs and replacing them with more positive and empowering ones.
It's like having a mental debate where optimism always wins.
And another source reminded us to focus on what we can control rather than wasting energy on things that are beyond our influence.
Right. It's about taking ownership of our actions and making choices that move us closer to our goals.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to touch on one final aspect of self-motivation that's often overlooked, our spiritual well-being.
Spiritual well-being. I've never really thought about that in relation to motivation.
It's about connecting with something larger than ourselves, finding that sense of meaning and purpose that gives our lives direction.
It's like having a compass that guides us on our journey.
One source recommended practices like meditation prayer or spending time in nature to nurture our spiritual side.
It's about finding those activities that help us connect with our inner stillness and tap into that source of peace and wisdom within.
And another source emphasized the importance of living in alignment with our values.
So making choices that feel authentic to who we are and what we believe in.
And when we do, we create a sense of inner harmony that fuels our motivation and allows us to live with integrity and purpose.
Wow. This has been such an incredible journey. We've covered so much ground, and I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of what it means to be self-motivated.
And remember, the journey of self-motivation is an ongoing one. There will be ups and downs, challenges, and setbacks.
But by embracing those challenges, learning from our mistakes, and consistently making those efforts to grow and evolve, we can unlock our full potential and create a life that's both meaningful and fulfilling.
Absolutely.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into self-motivation. What an amazing conversation. I feel so energized and inspired to put all of these incredible insights into practice.
Me too.
Thanks for listening to the Wellbeing Podcast. Take care, stay inspired, and see you next time.